Verify what we've done so far. Let's look at our application again. Our app right now, everything we've done so far is programmatic. We've set up a search bar and we've set up a collection view, right? All programmatically. So looking at our review list, what have we done? We've done a collection view and we've done programmatic UI work, okay? Next on that list, I'll go ahead and say unit test, which is our next stop. We'll create a unit test to test our model. Okay? So we started our project. It has a test in there, or it has a unit test target. So we'll go create a unit test. We will navigate over to where we say New York Times Top Stories test. We'll click on it. We'll remove all the stubs we have in our unit test or in our test class, and we'll create a test for our model. So here, test, unit test for our top story model. Okay. We'll start off our unit test with function. We'll say test, is it top stories? What should we call it? It's not top stories. Top stories is fine. Top stories is fine. Top story. And we'll put in our stub. So our test starts off with an arrange, an assert, an act, and assert. To test our model, we'll go ahead, we'll get some of the JSON from our Postman and we'll test that, okay? So to start that up, I will say let JSON data equal to multi-line string dot data. So we're taking a string and we're converting it to data using UTF-8. So we take a string, we convert it to JSON data. Okay. We'll navigate back to Postman. We'll take a look at our data here. We'll take a look at our data and we'll grab from line number one. From line number one, we'll just grab one news article, for example. So from line number one all the way down to to line 89, right? To line 89, copy. So line number one to line 89. Line number one to line 89. All we're interested in is one story or one article, and we'll base our model on that one article. So let's go now to JSON lint. Go to your browser and type in JSON lint. Go to your browser and type in JSON lint, L-I-N-T. Go to your browser, type in JSON lint, press enter. So JSON lint is a site that validates JSON for you. So if we now paste in what we copied and we say validate, it won't work, right? Because this is not valid. Our JSON becomes valid. We have to put one more. We have to put in a close square bracket and a curly square bracket. So what am I doing? I put in a close square bracket and a curly square bracket. At this point, I'll validate again, and I validate it. So it's valid JSON. I'll copy it and I'll Slack it out to us so that we all have the same JSON to work with. Okay? What I made for you to validate, because remember, we copied some JSON, but we did not include the last closing array bracket. So you need to add that, and you need to add in the last curly bracket. Those are the two things we added. Greg, were you able to validate your JSON? Okay, great. I'll just Slack it out for anybody who is not able to validate it. So copy, go to Slack, and here I will add it here. it's JSON or JavaScript. And here, paste it in here, and I just call this model data. So anybody who doesn't have it, just go ahead and copy that snippet. And let's go back to Xcode. Okay. So within our multi-line string, we'll paste in the JSON we had. The valid JSON, by the way, right? Make sure it's the valid JSON. We'll paste it into our JSON data. At this point, we have a blob of JSON, bless you. At this point, we have a blob of JSON that we could test. What we want to test here, I'll simply grab, let's see, we have results, we have section, we have politics, Trump administration here. I'll just grab in some string. So here, I'll grab the title string. So title string here. I'll test if my model works, and if my model, the title of the model, matches the title of our JSON. Everybody with me? Cool? So just grab the title, copy it. Where am I? Here? So what is this doing? It's taking a string and converting it to data. And now that we have JSON data, we could go ahead and parse it with JSON decoder. Okay, next step, let's go ahead and create some struct here. We'll create a struct. We'll call it top stories. Top stories needs to conform to codable. Okay, so far so good. In our top stories, what do we have? I will go back and forth with Postman. At the top, what is this? What's the top level? Is it an array or a dictionary? It's a dictionary, great. For my dictionary, what do I need? I'll get section. Section is what type? String. We have as well, we have last updated, which we don't really care about right now, but I'll just take it for now. I'll say last updated. So here we're actually creating our JSON, our model without any API. Everybody with me? This is independent of an API. It doesn't depend on an API to test it. This is the benefit of this unit test. So last updated is a string. Next we have results, which is an array. So here we have results, which is an array of stuff. I'll say article. So we need a type article. So now I'll go create a type article. It's also codable. What does an article have? Anybody? It has it's called title, right? Or is it called headline? So section, title, right? Section. Title. Abstract. Okay. That's enough for now to test. What else we have here? We'll grab in the rest of the data, create a date. What do we care about? Create a date or publish date? Publish date, okay. So published date is a string. As Swift developers, are we going to submit code that has snake case like this? No. So what are we going to do? Coding keys. All right, so let's do some coding keys here. In each struct, we'll do a coding key. We'll say private enum coding keys string coding key. And here we say case. We're not changing section, so we just keep it the same, but we're changing last updated, right? So last updated is last updated. And what's coming from our JSON is last updated, like this. Next, results will keep the same, but we still have to type it in, right? Even if you're keeping the name the same, you still have to type it in. Everybody? Okay. So now we're getting an error because no longer does it know about last underscore updated. Everybody with me? So now I need to update this to also say last updated here. Cool. So this one is good. We'll go to the next one. We'll say private enum. Yeah, sure. We're just changing the names of the properties. That's all it does, right? So it takes the what's in the parent, or sorry, the quotations here. I want to change it to something that's more Swifty. So in order to do that, I have to go ahead and use the enum that comes with quotable objects to go ahead and override that property name. It will convert it. It will convert this from the JSON to the one we named it. Yes, exactly. So next we have coding keys here, string, and this is coding key. And it would be nice if the only thing you change and you type in, but we're not there yet. Section, title, abstract, and lastly we have published date of type string, and we update this published date to published date. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? This should be this. Did I just break it? It's published date like this, correct?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so we have enough to test. We just took one tangent here because we needed to make this our properties more Swifty. So now all our property names are more Swifty. There's no snake case there. We all have camel case. Anybody still typing? Raise your hands before I continue. Okay, cool. Yes.
So if you want to create a custom string convertible, in your
Custom string convertible. You could extend the type, right, and make the protocol on that. That would be cleaner, right? If you want to have a description on something. Mel, question? Make sure you updated your camel case name. Did you get it? Anybody still typing their model?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's say we did the published date and let's say we like created time. For whatever reason, time is double.
You could do double.
No, we just have to add coding keys, string, double, coding key.
No, it could be double. You don't have to do anything extra here.
No.
No. Like you mean here, that could be type double. Is that your question?
Yeah.
I don't have to do anything else. If the type is double, it expects a double. I don't change that here. The string is coming from part of coding keys. That string doesn't have to do with your type itself.
So the string, the coding key string doesn't do anything with the
No, with the property types, no. Let's look, actually, let's see if there's one with a double in our Postman here. Any, when we get to multimedia, we could do the height and the size, right? And it would be type int, right? So that doesn't really matter there. Cool? Okay. All right, let's keep going. Next step. Yes? Oh, you need to copy this, and this is to bypass this three strings. Your indentation needs to be further away from the three quotations. This guy. Here. command, click command and the right curly, command and the right curly. Keep going again.
It's one you said?
It should be going now.
Oh.
Yeah. When you're doing multi-line strings, Luba had a question for multi-line strings. When you're doing multi-line strings, the beginning of the indentation needs to bypass the 3 quotes. Everybody? Everybody? What do I mean by that? Over here, in my multi-line string, Luba's was all the way to the left margin, like that. Right? Everybody? Right, so the body of my multi-line string needs to bypass the 3 quotations. Okay? If you have this error saying insufficient indentation, what it means is now you need to take your entire body, bypass the quotations. Everybody with me? Okay? The quickest way to do it is highlight the entire body of what you want to shift, and you could press command, and if you want to go left, you say left curly. If you want to go right to shift your entire thing, 1 tab away, you say right curly. Everybody? So you hold down command, and now I could go right as much as I want.
What if you just hit tab?
You could hit tab too. Yeah,
That's a little easier.
that's fine. Yeah. But to go back,
You hit shift tab.
you could do that too. Cool? So, thank you, sir. Yes,
Wait, you need to the right of the 3.
the 3 quotations here.
Right, so what if we just move that to the left instead of moving the whole body to the right?
You could move it to the left, but with my, as long as it bypasses the 3 indentations, right? With ours, the code looks such that I have 2 tabs here, so maybe moving everything to the left would not, right? My code starts to smell as far as like the look of it. We want to keep it pretty. Okay, so next step, let's go ahead and do our JSON decoding. I start off with my do catch. In here, I'm expecting top stories. I start off with a try because I'm using JSON decoder, which does throw an error if there's an error. I'm going to decode my object. What am I decoding? Is it an array or a dictionary? It's an array. What's it? Always think of the top level. What's the top level of our data? It's a dictionary, right? So I'm not going to do this, right? If I do this, this is a no bueno, right? Yeah? It's not an array. It's a dictionary. Go back to your Postman and go to the first line here. It's a curly bracket. Cool? All right. So now we have our top stories. What are we looking for? Here we want to assert. I want to say XCT assert equal. I'll put in 2 quotations here just to clean that up a little bit. And we'll put in some expectation here. So expected title. Expected title, do I still have it in the clipboard? Yay, I do. Our expected title should be this title here, right? This is not a good title, but that's what we have. Okay. So expected title should be equal to, let's get it here. So title equal to top stories. Top stories dot results. So results, let me go back here. Results is our array of articles. Do we see that? Do we see that? So results is an array of articles. We happen to have only 1 article here, but results is our array of articles. So here I'll say the first article dot title. And I'll use some nil coalescing with an empty string. So my expected title should be, I could say SUP title here. System on the test should be equal to this title. So this is our assert. And we could fail as well here in our JSON decoding. So XCT fail. I'll fail here with a decoding error. And my decoding error is just error. So here I'm testing my model. If it works, I could just take that same model and put it into a file, and I'm done, right? We had some setup to do. We had to get some JSON to test. We created our structs, which is our actual models that we'll be using in the application. We said if our decoding works, that title that we grabbed from the JSON, our first result should be equal to that same title, right? You could grab more articles, yes you can, but for our use case, one article is fine enough, okay? Yeah. Go all the way up.
JSON data variable.
All the way up. Are you having an error? Because we fixed the indentation, right? That's the only one you had?
It's not seeing this variable.
It's not seeing the JSON data variable? Okay, I'll come over and see what's going on. Everybody just keep typing here. Welcome. Okay. Yes, sir. Anybody remember the command for running the test? Command U. So let's hit Command U and see if we pass, failed. Either we pass or we fail, right? So Command U here. Great, we got a check mark. Did everybody get a check mark? We got a check mark. Here we could actually see if we fail by just saying immigration here and run Command U again. Force it to fail. Just force it to fail to make sure that your test is fine here. So this fails because here, it fails because what does it say? Immigration does not equal to immigration law. Okay? So at this point, we know our model works. Okay? Yes, there could be other situations where a different article might not have some multimedia type or whatever. Everybody with me? Right? But we'll come to that. But as far as like that basic model, we know it works. Okay? While we're here, we could start writing more of the model before we even continue. We could go to multimedia type. So an article has a multimedia type, right? Somebody walk me through this. Look at our JSON and somebody walk me through what I'm writing here. An article has, let's look at it. An article has a multimedia type, okay? So volunteers, anybody? What am I doing? I want to keep testing the model, so I want to put in the multimedia type. What am I doing? Okay, so start out by saying multimedia. It's an array of multimedia, right? Whatever we type in here, we'll just run the test again and make sure it works. So multimedia is of type multimedia. It doesn't find multimedia yet because it doesn't exist. But it will exist now. Struct multimedia. It's codable.
You also would have to add multimedia to the email.
Yes, good point. That's why we have that error here. Very good, Tanya. So Tanya said now we have 124. We need to also make a case for it. Everybody get that? Cool? Very good. So here we'll just say multimedia. Very good. And then this error goes away. And now what does a multimedia have? A URL. So I just say URL here. What else does it have? Format, which we care about. What? The height and the width. So here, Mr. Christian,
Yeah.
we could say double here. What else? Width. And caption, you said? What's caption type? That's about it, right? What else we have? Multimedia, copyright. We don't care about that right now. Type, that's fine. Okay, that's fine for now at basis. And here, there's no reason to do coding keys. Christian, there's no reason to do coding keys. If we have to do coding keys, the double would still be fine there because that's the type of the property.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, like, had that one been the one that was named differently?
Yeah. It would not matter.
Yeah.
It still holds. It's just the string we name, we change it. At this point, we run our test again, Command U, make sure it still passes. Right? We still get the check mark. Okay? Again, we haven't done any API client here. I'm not running the code to do any API client. I'm just writing a unit test to see if my model works. At minimum, we expect that for the unit assessment. Right? For which, Eric, for which one? Which one, the multimedia one, the one we just wrote? Let's see what you have here. Everybody finished typing the JSON decoder parsing? Anybody still typing? Okay, so Eric, what part do you want to see here? Article? All right, cool, great. So we have our model, it works, we tested it. Let's go ahead now and grab the model we just wrote here. So grab that entire model. And again, I'm grabbing my model. So from line 140, everything we wrote here, I'm just grabbing that model, copy it, copy the model, cut it out, and let's go create a file. So let's go create a file. Actually, yeah, that's fine. Let's go create a file. New file, switch file, and call it top story. And put in our model here. So you should have how many structs? 3 structs in all. Yeah, I called it top story, yeah. After you've done that, Command U again and make sure your test still passes. Command U and make sure your test still passes. Our test still passes. Everybody, right? Our test still passes. Yes?
If it wasn't to pass, would it be like the case of the option of it? Because if it works in that.
If it works here, right, it could be when you run the API, maybe an article is missing something. That's fine, we make it optional. Cool? But with one article right now, with everything we listed here, it works. Cool? But yes, maybe you have an article that doesn't have a caption, maybe. Right? Very good. But make sure all our tests pass. Anybody test failed? Hands up. Lilia, your test failed. What's the? I slacked out the test. I slacked out the test. I slacked out the test we just ran. So, yes, sir.
So wouldn't you want to test the entire API?
When you bring,
It's like, I mean, you know,
when you say the entire API, what exactly?
it's like Chelsea was saying that.
You could test your function. You could test your function later. The function you write for the API.
Caption's missing for something in the JSON that we know that caption is there and what we're testing. So
That gives you a basic test, right? Now, when you bring your API client in, you could test that as well, because that's working with the actual data online, right?
yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Wouldn't it be better to test like?
In our case, it would be better to decouple the network call from the actual model test, right? Because tomorrow the API could be different. But right now, I'm just testing my basic model. Yes, maybe you have an optional somewhere, right? Maybe I want to test my API client itself, and that becomes not a unit test, that becomes an asynchronous test, right? It's no longer a unit test. A unit test is some piece of data that does not change or it doesn't depend on anything else. Cool? Yeah. But yes, it could fail, and we could come back and fix that test there. Cool? Very good. Okay, so now at this point, what's the best practice thing we should do now? What should we do? Push, right? So we'll create a commit message, as Mr. Greg says here. We'll go commit, because we've done a big change here. We'll say wrote unit test against model. Zoom in here. Wrote unit test against top story model. Okay. And we commit and we push. Okay, awesome. So at this point, a good place to go. Anybody wants to have a hand out? What's the next step here? What should we do next? API client, right? I mean, it says go ahead and address the API client. Okay, we'll do just that. Oh, my Toy Story went in the wrong place. Toy Story, Top Story. Am I what? Not yet, actually. You saw me just swap a t-shirt. I was sweating bullets, so I had to go swap out the shirt. Okay, let's group this guy into his own folder. This one is models. And now we're going to go create an API client. Great. So new file, Swift file, and we are creating an API client. We'll call it NYT top stories API client. It's a bit long there. It's okay. Top stories API client, and click create. That folder will go into network services. Good question. I mean, good answer. Question there. API client. Did I put it back in here? Where does it go? Okay. All right. We have to import something, right? Who said that? What are we importing? Network helper, right? So now we need a Swift package that we wrote to go ahead and do our network calls. So I'll go to File, Swift package, Add package, and we'll add in the package. So I'll say https://github.com//image kit. So we're importing image kit. Image kit has data persistence, it has image classes, and it has a network helper, right? So all those we'll be using throughout this app. At this point, I'll click next. The latest update is 1.04. We'll stick with versions. We'll say next. It adds the package to our project and finishes. And at this point, we want to verify if it did add. Now we have image kit, network helper, and data persistence.
Is there a way to save it here so we don't have to
Like to cache it, just start a repo. That's the easiest way, really. Like start a repo, you know you have access to it, just copy and cool. Cool. Or you could even fork it too. Well, forking wouldn't really help there, but start. All right. Next up, we could actually take a pause here too and create a commit message. So go source control commit. Source control commit, and here, check all those here in the commit. Make sure everything is checked because you want to also add the Swift package manager to GitHub. And then we'll say added Swift packages to project. And we'll say commit error. Oh, what did I miss here? Did I take the wrong thing? Oh. 1 second, cancel this. Commit. That's what I'm saying. Like, let's go to terminal and do this. What happened? Yeah, just go to terminal and do this. Zoom in here. Let's see what's happening. And go to my desktop. Go to desktop, which is where my application is. And navigate to the project. And in here, do get status. Right? So here, I want to add everything here. I want to add the Swift package manager. So now I want to do get add everything. So get add everything here. Get commit. Add in Swift packages. And get push. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes there's hiccups there with export source control, but we go back to terminal and we get it done. It wasn't pushing all what I wanted to push up in source control, right?
So GitHub now, you should have one contribution.
Let's go back to GitHub. You want to see what GitHub looks like? GitHub, if I go to my commits, those are the commits I have. We started off with the initial commit. We added the child controllers to the tab controller. We added the collection view and the search bar. We wrote unit tests against top story model, and now we added the Swift packages. The what? I was looking for that big goal, right? Luba is asking about commits here. You talk about your profile, Luba? This guy? Right? It should show commits here.
Mine shows one contribution.
I'll come and take a look at it offline. Like, put me offline and let's take a look at it. Cool? All right. But your contribution should go up because this is your own repo. If there's anything with the credentials, I'll take a look at it and see what's happening there. Cool? With your GitHub actual credentials. All right. Great. Do we all have our commits on GitHub? Okay, cool. Next step, what's the next step? The logical step, Amini says, let's go create the API client. We did create the API client. Let's navigate to the API client. Let's navigate over. Where am I? Where did I dump this? API client, go where you deserve. Somebody was asking about a folder, Mel. If you want to create a folder for this one, you could say network services. So new group from selection, I would say network services. Cool? So network services has API client, models has top story, views, we only have one view so far. Our controllers, we have 4, and supporting files is where our app delegate and scene delegate stuff is. Okay, let's go forth to our API client. So here, we'll import our network helper. We'll go ahead and write our API client. We'll have one function, static function, that says, what's we gonna call it? We'll call it fetch top stories for section, which is a string. Okay, and our completion at escaping. We have a result type, an array of articles, and app error. So that's our function signature. Fetch top stories takes a section. For example, business is a section. I only want to see business headlines or technology, whatever the user passes. And that takes us to our endpoint URL. So endpoint URL string. We'll guard against the URL. So we'll create a URL, guard that URL equal to URL string endpoint URL. If that's not valid, we'll throw our first error. Completion, failure, bad URL, endpoint URL, return. Yeah? Which one is that? Oh yeah, oh you mean like here, why we're returning an array now? Because at the end of the day, we'll do the same JSON decoder, but our completion will say top stories dot results. And the dot results is an array of articles. But remember, from the JSON decoder, the top object will be a dictionary still. Cool? Good question. Next, we'll create our request. URL request takes a URL. And then we use our network helper dot shared, our singleton here, and perform data task. Request result. Okay. Next, we'll switch on our result type. Case failure. We capture it in our completion. Failure. Otherwise, we have a success, which in that case, we get data back. And with our data, we'll construct our array of top stories. So here, we'll do very similar to what we did in our unit test. As a matter of fact, you could even probably copy the code you have in your unit test there because you tested it before. But here we'll say top stories, JSON decoder, decode object, our top stories dot self data, and who was it? Tanya, to go to your question, is going to be success here. It's expecting an array of articles, but my top stories is the root level of it. But in my top stories, I have results, right? And the results is the array. Cool? And lastly, for our catch, where we could have a decoding error, for example, Kelby, if we have an error here, because some article doesn't have a caption, it would come here, then we would update our model. So here in our completion, we will have failure, it's a decoding error, and error. Build, no errors. Other things we need to do, we need to put in our endpoint here, and we'll take a short break and we will do the config. Actually, we won't take a break to do that, but to actually add the API key, I'm not gonna show that on video, but let's go to Postman. and get the string. Wow, that was a long string. Looks shorter in Postman. Okay, so the string we put into our endpoint URL is the string from our Postman, right? Minus the key. The key will use a config.swift. We'll add it to the getIgnore. We do not have a getIgnore yet. That's the next step we'll do after we push our code. So we're in a good place to push our code. We'll push our code. We'll create a getIgnore file on GitHub, and we'll include a file called config.swift. In that file, we'll put our API key. Cool? Great. All right, let's go ahead and create a commit now. So I go to source control, I click on commit, and not that message, Mr. Xcode, thank you very much. What are we doing? So we added API client, commit, and push. Great. Let us finish typing. Anybody still typing? Cool. So we'll finish typing and then we'll go to GitHub. For other people who are done typing, you could go to GitHub, go create a new file, .getIgnore, select Swift as the template, and at the way at the bottom, you would add your DS store, and then you would add a config.swift file. So that's the next step. Nothing there really. We just imported the network helper. Did you import the package? I mean, did you add the package?
Fresh restart of Xcode usually solves that thing. I run into that problem almost every day. I restart Xcode. Sometimes I have to restart the computer though.
Aaron, can you double check Christmas here? Network helper is fine, but his code itself, his API client, there's errors there. It might be in the signature, his completion closure. Anybody still typing? Okay, one person still typing. We'll wait there. What, a minute? A minute? Less than a minute again? Okay. Wow, time just flies, man. Where does it go, Shania? Just having fun. It just wants to end it. Crazy. We'll end after doing the config getIgnore and at least a simple view controller test of do I get articles. What's that? Yeah, just file. We'll do it together. Let's do it together. Ian, good? Okay, so at this point we pushed our code to GitHub, correct? All right, let's navigate to our GitHub account. Let's navigate to our repo, our top stories repo. Okay, I'm in my top stories repo. I want to create a getIgnore. I click on create new file, like we did yesterday. What am I typing in here? .getIgnore. And what template am I looking for? Swift, right? So I type in Swift, comes up. Great, I get a template like magic. That template has a lot of default values that we need. We'll go all the way to the bottom and add in our own files that we want to ignore. So we could ignore any file, right? Like anything I want to ignore, I put it in here. For example, if I have a file called loba.swift that I want to ignore, I put it here, right? In our case, we want to ignore config.swift. We also want to ignore dsstore. Dsstore, it has no value on GitHub. That's a local file that should never get pushed to GitHub. is created by the Mac. It has nothing to do with our project, right? Anything that doesn't have anything to do with your project, you really do not want it on GitHub, right? Does that make sense? Okay, cool, very good. So Luba is getting ignored. And if I want to comment, I use a hashtag to comment. Luba is not allowed, right? Those are comments here. I'm not going to tell people what's in my config file. It's fine. Cool. So make sure we have config.swift. And anything you're trying to ignore, it should not exist before you try to ignore it. Other than that, you'll have to go back and delete it from GitHub. Everybody with me? So you don't first create the config.swift in your Xcode and then try to ignore it. It's too late. You have to go back, delete it, and then go through the process, right? Cool. So at this point, I'll commit the file. And now I have 7 commits. One has create, get, ignore. I go back to Xcode, and I'm doing a pull. So I go back to source control. I go to source control, and I say pull, because I have changes. What did I not push? Commit. That's just a space. I don't care about that. Discard and pull. Okay, at this point I want to navigate to terminal to verify that everything went well. What's that? You probably have some edits. See what you changed. Like go to commit, click on commit, you'll see the actual line of code you changed. And if you're not, if you don't want to keep that change, do these cardinal changes. Okay, so push it first. Or make a commit message, sorry. Make a commit message, yeah. It goes in like a stash folder and you could retrieve it later. Okay, so type in ls-a. Let me clear my console here. Type in ls-a. What does ls-a do again, May? What files? There's a special file it checks. Or it shows all files, but it also shows hidden files, right? The most important one there is hidden files. ls by itself, it lists all the files except hidden files. If I want to see my hidden files, anything that starts with a dot is a hidden file. I do ls-a, and now I see I have a get ignore. If I want to see the contents of my get ignore, what's a command I could type in? Open, right? So open.getIgnore. And I navigate all the way to the bottom, and I do see I have a DS store and a config.swift. Everybody sees that? So you want to validate those things before you go ahead and do anything else. So at this point, I could go and create my config.swift in my Xcode and know that it won't get pushed. Cool. Go back to Xcode. And Meryl, question?
No, I just need some help because I like to write notes and cover those notes.
What did we write last? We pushed the API client, right? You have the API client?
Yes, I have everything, it's just that I write extra notes.
Is it in there?
It's in the
Oh, and you want to push that as well?
yes.
Okay, so write a commit, like go to source control, commit.
So I erased it, thinking that it would work.
And then pull.
Yeah.
At this point, pull. Because there's changes. It says local output date. So now you're doing it. So, okay. So, here you go. So now you're up to date. You're in sync. You're in sync with remote and local.
So what was the last comment?
We just viewed the contents of the get ignore. Right? Verify that you have a config.swift in there. Cool? Great. Perfecto. Okay, we're almost there. Now let's go ahead and create a config.swift file. In my supporting files, I'll create my config.swift file there. So in my supporting files, I will create a new file. And I will call that new file config.swift. Oh, sorry. Just checking. No, I wasn't checking. Okay, so we have our config file. We say create.
Sorry, just to double check, that was an empty Swift file?
Yes, there was an empty Swift file. All right, if I go to source control and I go to commit, if everything went well, I should not see any Swift file there. Everybody with me? Right? In my project, if I click on my project folder, or the changes in my project folder, the project folder, guys, for group projects yesterday, this is especially important. The project folder, this project.pbxproj, it knows that I created some file called config.swift. Do we see that? Do we see that? Right? I push that to GitHub. The file itself will not exist on GitHub, but the project file knows about it, right? Think of the file like a configuration file. It knows all the parts of my project, okay? So when we pull from when we do a merge, when we do a pull request, we merge or whatever we do, we come back, we'll see there's a scaffold of the file or the folder, but it doesn't exist, right? It doesn't exist because GitHub never had it. When I pull from GitHub, it's not there. The project file knows about it. It shows me like, hey, this thing should exist. I don't have it. That's why we delete and we recreate. Okay? And to keep it simpler, we create one file instead of having a folder called secrets and in there have a thing, right? So just create a config.swift file or whatever you want to name your thing, delete it, put it in your get ignore, and then that's it. So the friction is less. I have one file to create. Everybody? And then that file should just be local, so you could just like copy paste it into the file you create. All right, cool. So here we are good. Let's just make a commit here. So updated config file, commit, and push. Before you do anything there, you just want to verify on both ends everything went well before you start putting your keys in there. So now I go to my GitHub, I refresh, I have an update config file, I go to my project, I go inside of my NYTTopStories, my supporting files, and I should not have a config file in there. Everybody? Cool? So that went well. At this point, we could put in our API key and be okay knowing that it's not going to get pushed to GitHub. Okay? Awesome. What does the structure of this look like? It will look like this. We'll say struct, we'll say config, and we'll say static let API key equal to whatever your API key is. So this is going to work here, given that your API key is in here. I'll put a fiddle error there, so we remember to put our API key in there. Well, we're doing it now, right? But I'm not doing it. So put your API key in here. And let's go over to our API client. And right where we have API key equal, we'll string interpolate. We'll say config build dot API key. Okay? And we could write an next unit test, Kelby, but in this case, we'll just go to our view controller and just see quickly like what happens here. So make sure we have equal to config.api key. Somebody's going to test it, not me, because I'm not putting my API key in here for now. So whoever gets it, just raise your hand so we acknowledge everything is working. We'll go to our newsfeed controller. We'll go to our newsfeed controller, right below our view.load here. I'll say private function fetch stories. Fetch stories could take in some sort of section or for section, some string. We'll use a default article. We'll say technology. And we'll go ahead and use our API client, and we'll say fetch result and here I say section, and here I switch. Any confirmation yet? Result, case, failure, let app error, break here. No, just put a print statement, print. Fetching error, fetching stories, error, and case success. That means we got articles. Where am I? Yeah, app error. Thank you, sir. And here we have our articles. We'll simply just print found articles.count. Cool. Again, I'm not putting my API key in, but actually I could put my API key in. Let me move this over. I'll come right back. Let me just quickly put my API key in here. Actually, I cannot put my API key. What am I doing? I got one screen. Confirmation? Okay, Kelby confirmed that all is good. Thank you, sir. You get a sack of nuts. Awesome, thank you. All right, so we confirmed that it works. We'll stop here when everybody finishes typing, and we'll come back tomorrow. But first, we'll review what we did today, and we'll come back tomorrow and do some more. Okay, anybody still typing? Okay, cool. Let's just review what we did today. So today we reviewed collection views. We haven't done user defaults and we haven't done documents directory. Tomorrow we'll kick off by doing those two. Feel free to work on the app because we have a prototype of what the app looks like. So feel free to work on it for review if you have that time there. But tomorrow we'll be doing user defaults with the picker view. We'll be doing documents directory with saving of an article, right? It looks like 3, but there's a lot of things between those three lists of items there. So if we're not, again, we'll see what we have tomorrow, but if we come by 1 o'clock, we're not done, we'll come back Monday to finish. Does that make sense? Because Monday we have a bigger chunk of the day to work with, review there, because assessment is Tuesday. Cool? Any questions? Any questions before we stop today? And just to confirm, if everything went well, either you have an error, in that case you have a decoding error from one of the properties, or you have some sort of article count. What count did you get, Kelby? Oh, okay, got it. 34, okay, perfect, thank you. All right, cool, so we'll stop here. Question?
Why don't you want to make the file before making the...
You mean the get ignore?
Yeah.
Because if you create it first, right, and you push, right, Mel, you create a config file first, right, and you push, it exists on GitHub. The get ignore needs to first see what's the structure of your folder, right? It does it after the fact, not before the fact. Okay? So whatever you want to ignore, you want to make sure that you ignore it in the get ignore file before you create that file. All right, cool. So we'll stop here.